we're at 200, they're at 250. I did the same thing with NATO. I got them to pay up. NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. And everybody, you never saw more money pour in to Secretary General Stoltenberg. Well, I don't know if he is anymore, but he was my biggest fan. He said, all these presidents came in, they'd make a speech, they'd leave, and that was it. And they all owed money, and they wouldn't pay it. I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. And the money came flowing in.
It's also incredibly ironic listening to him complain about other people not paying his bills when he's been sued many, many times for not paying his bills himself. Not to mention that these so-called conversations that he's describing, I'm going to go ahead and assume that they never actually happened. You see, this is where Trump really exposes how little he understands about how geopolitics is actually done and how little his base actually understands how things work on a geopolitical level. I mean, many of them don't even understand anything outside of their own immediate sensory perception. A threat like that, to just let them get invaded, that works on an everyday interpersonal relationship level, even, works with somebody who owes you money on the streets. But that doesn't work in geopolitics. In real life, if that person gets invaded, the enemy which you were putting out money to fight now has a base closer to yours and now has a more strategic position, which you cannot allow to happen from a military standpoint. But geopolitically, that's also a disaster because that's going to turn people against you. It's also going to harm the economy because many of these countries, which are NATO countries, have a very strong economic relationship with the United States. And then if they get invaded and their economy is essentially destroyed in a war, that's going to affect your economy as well. Not to mention the political consequences at home and abroad for having done that. So that's easy to say something like that. It's quite another to actually do it. I mean, there's a very big difference between doing that on, like I said, an interpersonal level and on a geopolitical level. It's not something that's really all that feasible. It really shows how little he actually knows. NATO exists to maintain the U.S. as a hegemonic power in the world. I mean, that's the whole point, was for NATO was to aim guns at the Soviet Union, the other superpower at the time, which no longer exists, which means the actual real intended purpose of NATO no longer exists. Now it serves the purpose of pointing guns at Russia and to a minor degree at China, which it's not really very effective in that manner, but that's besides the point. So why shouldn't they have to pay the lion's share? This is all for the benefit of the United States. So why shouldn't they have to pay the most? I mean, these other countries, they're essentially kind of dragged along into this. If they want a beneficial relationship with the world's hegemonic superpower, one that is beneficial to them economically and helps their economy, then they kind of have to go along with it because the United States will punish you if you don't. If you don't go along with U.S. hegemonic power, you end up like Venezuela or Iran or the DPRK. Marginalized, damaged, ruined. well, not necessarily ruined, but damaged, hindered, etc., blocked from world banking institutions, whatnot. So the U.S. is basically putting a gun to their head and saying, here, pay up, and I'll be nice to you. This is kind of extortion. So you can understand why many of the European allies, which don't actually want to be a part of it, don't want to be a part of the inter-imperialist struggle between Russia and the United States anyway, are reluctant to pay. They don't really want to. And many of these countries are having their own budgetary problems as it is. They've got their own problems to deal with without the world's hegemonic superpower demanding money out of them. So you can understand why this would be a difficult situation for them, and why maybe paying for the United States' privilege of being the world's hegemonic power is not really a priority to them, and not something that they really want to carry through. And now the other NATO member countries, they know this. The U.S., has U.S. influence leaders in power, and the country gets a better offer, getting a better economic relationship with the U.S., to have U.S. bases there, and to technically be an ally, even though most often they really don't want to. All they want to do is to do regular trade, but the U.S. is putting so many conditions on it, those conditions maintaining their hegemonic position. So this simple statement of, I would make them pay up, or I wouldn't defend them, is such an ridiculously oversimplistic statement that on a political, never mind a geopolitical level, is laughably oversimplified. I mean, this truly is the statement of someone who really has no idea how politics actually works, let alone any idea of how geopolitics actually works. That's one of the reasons why the actual capitalist system doesn't want him to be president again. Not because of he's some big rebellious leader who's going to take down all the evil conspiracy theory nonsense, but because he's frankly just incompetent. He doesn't get how this works. He doesn't get how the empire is to be maintained. During his first presidency, they practically had to twist his arm to get him to do the most basic minimum bare amount of work. So far from this idea that he's like some great rebel, political outsider, in a manner of speaking, yes, he is a political outsider. He's not really ingrained within the political elite establishment. But you don't get into that goddamn office unless somebody from that elite status, or that elite status community in general, has given you the okay to do so. And they've only given you the okay to do so because you're going to do what you're supposed to do. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then you don't get in. If Trump really was the great rebellion against the whatever conspiracy theory you believe in, then he would never have made it into the office of president to begin with. Because the system would never have allowed someone to get in who would have dismantled it to begin with. And that is the part that people don't understand. And that's really the real key to understanding Trump and his political existence.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.